Good evening. Tonight, we leave behind great battles, powerful emperors, and the noisy cities of the Roman Empire. Instead, we follow something much quieter, a road made of stone, a road that once carried farmers, merchants, travelers, and hopeful families through the gentle hills of northern Italy. A road that was built to connect people, yet over the centuries became so forgotten that even its name disappeared from memory. As you settle in, allow yourself to imagine the cool morning air, the distant songs of birds, and the peaceful rhythm of footsteps upon ancient stone. There is nowhere to hurry. Tonight's journey moves slowly, just as life once did. Our story begins in the spring of the year AD 358. The first light of dawn spread across the rolling hills like a soft golden blanket. Thin streams of mist drifted through vineyards, while rows of olive trees stood quietly beneath the rising sun. Small farms dotted the countryside, their stone walls glowing gently in the early morning light. Sheep grazed peacefully on grassy slopes, and somewhere in the distance, a rooster welcomed another ordinary day. To most people, it seemed like any other morning. But for the workers gathered near the edge of a narrow valley, it marked another important day in a project that would take years to complete. The steady sound of iron striking stone echoed through the peaceful countryside. A hammer rose, then fell, again and again. Among the workers stood a young Roman stonemason named Marcus Flavius. Marcus was 26 years old, with strong hands roughened by years of labor beneath the open sky. His dark brown hair was tied behind his head with a simple leather cord, and the sleeves of his wool tunic were rolled above his elbows. His face carried no signs of wealth or importance, yet there was something quietly proud about the way he worked. Every stone mattered. Every measurement mattered. His father had taught him that a good road should welcome travelers long after its builders are forgotten. Marcus had never forgotten those words. Each morning before sunrise, he walked nearly 4 miles from his farmhouse to the construction site. He carried only a bronze hammer, a small chisel, a leather flask with cool spring water. The tools were simple, the work was not. Roman roads were famous throughout the ancient world because they were built with extraordinary care. Before a single paving stone could be placed, workers first dug deep trenches through the earth. Large foundation stones were carefully arranged inside them. Above those came layers of crushed rock, gravel, and packed sand. Only then were the heavy paving stones placed across the surface. Nothing was rushed. Everything had a purpose. Marcus spent nearly an hour adjusting a single stone if necessary. Some younger workers complained. "Nobody will notice if it's a little uneven," Marcus smiled without looking up. "They may not notice today, but someone will notice 100 years from now." The young worker laughed. 100 years? Marcus simply nodded. "If we do our work well, this road will still be here." The thought seemed impossible, yet Roman builders often believed exactly that. They were not building for themselves, they were building for generations they would never meet. By midday, The warm spring sun filled the valley. The scent of wild herbs drifted through the air. Lizards rested upon warm rocks. Butterflies floated above colorful flowers growing beside the unfinished road. Nearby, 2 oxen slowly pulled a wagon loaded with fresh stone from a local quarry. The driver greeted Marcus with a cheerful wave. "Morning." Marcus smiled. "You're late." The man laughed. The oxen disagreed. Even simple conversations seemed slower in those days. Nobody hurried. Time itself appeared more patient. During the afternoon, Marcus climbed a small hill overlooking the valley. From there, he could clearly see the unfinished road stretching across the landscape like a gray ribbon. Far beyond the fields stood a tiny mountain village known as Valle Ombra. Few maps even included its name. Only a few hundred people lived there. Most families grew wheat and olives. Others raised sheep or made clay pots that were traded in nearby towns. Life inside the village followed the changing seasons. Spring brought planting. Summer brought harvesting. Autumn filled the air with the smell of fresh grapes being pressed into wine. Winter invited families to gather around warm fires while grandparents told old stories to children who listened with wide eyes. For generations, Valle Ombra had remained almost untouched by the wider world. Travelers rarely visited. Merchants often avoided the difficult mountain paths. During heavy rain, the muddy trails became nearly impossible to cross. Everything changed when Roman engineers decided to build a proper road through the valley. The villagers watched the construction with growing excitement. Some had never traveled farther than the next town. Others dreamed of selling their goods in larger markets. Children stood beside the worksite every afternoon, fascinated by the organized rhythm of Roman builders. Marcus noticed them often. One little boy asked, "Will this road reach Rome?" Marcus smiled. "Eventually." The boy's eyes grew wide. "The real Rome?" "The real Rome." The child looked toward the distant hills as though he could already see the great city beyond them. News traveled slowly. Sometimes months passed before important events reached villages like Valle Ombra. But roads changed everything. Letters arrived sooner. Doctors could travel farther. Merchants carried spices, cloth, books, and stories from places ordinary villagers had only imagined. A road did much more than connect towns. It connected lives. One cool evening, as Marcus finished smoothing another section of stone, an elderly traveler approached. His gray beard reached almost to his chest. A worn walking stick supported each careful step. Dust covered his sandals. He looked as though he had spent months traveling. The old man stopped beside Marcus. "You work carefully." Marcus looked up and smiled. "I try." The traveler rested both hands upon his walking stick. "I've walked many Roman roads. Some are already beginning to crack." Marcus gently brushed dust from the stone beneath him. "Nothing lasts forever." The traveler nodded thoughtfully. "No, but some things last longer because people cared when they built them." For several moments, they simply stood together in silence, listening to birds singing somewhere among the olive trees. Finally, the old man asked, "What do you think people will remember?" Marcus looked down the unfinished road stretching toward the distant village. They won't remember my name. They won't know who placed these stones. But perhaps they'll remember how easy the journey became. The traveler smiled. I believe you're right. Without another word, he continued walking toward Valle Ombra until he disappeared beyond the hill. Marcus watched him go. For reasons he couldn't explain, he felt that conversation would stay with him for many years. As the weeks passed, the final sections of road slowly came together. Stone after stone, hammer strike after hammer strike. The valley gradually transformed. Nobody realized it then, but beneath those carefully fitted stones lay the beginning of a story that...
The road was officially completed just before the beginning of summer. There was no grand ceremony from the emperor, no marching legions, no famous generals, only the quiet joy of ordinary people whose lives were about to become a little easier. The people of Valle Ombra decorated the entrance to their village with branches of olive trees and wildflowers gathered from the surrounding hills. Long wooden tables were placed beneath the shade of ancient oak trees. Fresh bread cooled on woven baskets. Wheels of sheep cheese rested on linen cloths, and clay cups waited to be filled with watered wine pressed from the previous autumn's harvest. Children were the first to run across the new road. They laughed as their sandals tapped against the smooth stone surface, amazed that there was no mud, no loose rocks, and no puddles slowing them down. The older villagers watched with quiet satisfaction. For generations, they had struggled through narrow mountain paths that became dangerous after every heavy rain. Wagons often broke their wheels. Horses slipped on loose stones. Travelers sometimes chose longer routes simply to avoid the valley altogether. Now everything felt different. Marcus stood near the edge of the village square with the other workers. He preferred watching rather than celebrating. Seeing families smile was enough. An elderly woman approached carrying a small basket. Inside were warm honey cakes. She offered one to Marcus. "You built this road." Marcus accepted the cake politely. "We all built it." She smiled. "Perhaps. But today my grandson reached the market in half the usual time. I think that deserves a thank you." Marcus laughed softly. "It certainly does." Throughout the day, merchants began arriving from neighboring towns. One wagon carried colorful fabrics dyed deep blue and crimson. Another brought finely crafted glass bottles that sparkled beneath the afternoon sunlight. A traveling baker sold sweet pastries flavored with figs and almonds. For many children, it was the first time they had seen food from another region. Everything seemed exciting. Everything seemed possible. As evening approached, musicians played gentle melodies using wooden flutes and small stringed instruments. Families gathered beneath lanterns while neighbors exchanged stories that lasted long after sunset. For the people of Valle Ombra, the road felt like the beginning of a new chapter. And for several years, it truly was. The harvests became easier to sell. More traders stopped in the village. A small stable was built beside the road for travelers needing fresh horses. The village inn, once nearly empty most nights, slowly became a welcoming stop for merchants crossing the hills. Its owner, an elderly man named Lucius, had almost given up hope before the road arrived. Now, nearly every evening, someone knocked on his wooden door. Some guests stayed only one night. Others remained for several days while repairing wagons or resting tired animals. Lucius enjoyed listening more than speaking. Every traveler carried a different story. Some came from bustling cities where thousands of people filled crowded streets. Others crossed distant mountains covered in snow. A few had even visited Rome itself. To the villagers, those stories sounded almost unbelievable. One autumn evening, a merchant from Mediolanum, known today as Milan, sat beside the inn's fireplace while sipping warm vegetable broth. Several children gathered around him. "Is Rome really as big as people say?" one little girl asked. The merchant smiled. "Bigger, much bigger. Some streets are so crowded that you can barely see the ground." The children looked at each other in amazement. Lucius chuckled quietly. "In Valle Umbra, our busiest traffic is usually 3 sheep arguing with a donkey." The room filled with gentle laughter. It was a peaceful place. Simple, comfortable. Exactly the kind of village most travelers hoped to find after days of walking. Marcus visited the inn whenever work brought him through the valley. Although the road was finished, Roman builders often returned to inspect their work. Heavy rains could loosen drainage ditches. Winter frost sometimes shifted individual stones. Maintenance was just as important as construction. Marcus never minded. He enjoyed seeing the road alive with people. One crisp morning, while inspecting a section near the entrance to the village, he noticed something that made him smile. Grass had begun growing between the edges of the paving stones. Not enough to damage the road, just enough to soften its appearance. Nature always found a way to leave its mark. Marcus knelt beside the tiny green shoots. A young shepherd watching nearby asked, "Should I pull them out?" Marcus looked thoughtfully at the grass. "No, leave them. The road and the earth can live together." The boy nodded, though he wasn't entirely sure what Marcus meant. As seasons passed, Marcus became familiar with many faces along the road. There was Julia, who carried baskets of fresh apples to market every Thursday. Old Titus, whose donkey always refused to cross the small bridge unless someone walked beside it. Twin brothers who delivered clay pots every month and argued about nearly everything except which bakery made the best bread. The road connected all of them, not only to nearby towns, but to one another. Years slipped quietly by. Children grew taller. Young couples married. New homes appeared along the hillsides. Trees planted beside the road stretched higher with each passing spring. It seemed impossible that anything could disturb such peaceful routines. Yet beyond the distant mountains, the Roman Empire was changing. Messages carried troubling news. There were reports of increasing pressure along the empire's northern frontiers. Some frontier forts requested more soldiers. Taxes slowly increased. Travelers arriving at the inn spoke of uncertainty in distant provinces. But Valle Umbra still felt untouched. Those problems belonged to other places, other people. The villagers continued tending vineyards. Children continued racing along the road. Farmers still greeted each sunrise with familiar routines. The stone road remained solid, reliable, almost eternal. No one standing there could imagine that centuries later, the laughter of the marketplace would fade. The inn would fall silent. The vineyards would disappear beneath wild forests. And the beautiful Roman road, built with such care, would slowly vanish beneath leaves, moss, and forgotten time.
The following spring arrived with gentle rain instead of bright sunshine. Tiny drops clung to olive leaves, and the fields surrounding Valle Umbra turned a rich shade of green. Wildflowers covered the hillsides once again, just as they had every year for as long as anyone could remember. At first glance, nothing seemed different. Farmers still greeted one another before sunrise. Children still chased one another through the village square. The bakery still filled the morning air with the comforting smell of fresh bread.
Yet Marcus noticed something that few others did. The road had grown quieter. Not silent, just quieter. He counted only 4 merchant wagons during an entire week. Only a year earlier, he would have counted twice that number. One afternoon, while repairing a loose drainage stone, Marcus met an old merchant named Septimus who had traveled this route for nearly 20 years. The man's wagon was smaller than usual. Only 2 wooden barrels rested inside. Marcus smiled. "Business must be good if you're traveling so light." Septimus sighed. "I wish that were true." Marcus looked at him curiously. "What happened?" The old merchant adjusted the reins. "The larger markets are changing. Some traders are choosing different roads. They say the western routes are safer." Marcus frowned. "Safer from what?" Septimus hesitated before answering. "I don't really know. Rumors, taxes, political troubles. Everyone tells a different story." With that, he continued toward the village. Marcus watched until the wagon disappeared around the bend. For the first time, he wondered whether roads could become lonely. Summer brought warmer weather. The vineyards produced healthy grapes. The wheat fields swayed gently beneath clear blue skies. Life inside Valley Ombra remained peaceful, but the inn told a different story. Lucius noticed it first. Several guest rooms remained empty night after night. The stable held fewer horses. The fireplace burned for fewer strangers. One evening he counted only 3 travelers eating supper. Years earlier, every table would have been full. He quietly polished wooden cups while listening to the conversations. Most guests spoke about uncertainty. One man mentioned that an important bridge farther south had fallen into disrepair. Another claimed that several tax collectors had abandoned smaller villages. A courier quietly admitted that official messages were arriving less often than before. No one seemed frightened, only uncertain. The Roman Empire still stood, but something beneath its surface felt different. Marcus continued maintaining the road exactly as he always had. He repaired cracked stones, cleared blocked drainage channels, trimmed bushes that slowly reached towards the pavement. Some younger workers questioned his dedication. "Hardly anyone travels this section anymore," one of them remarked. Marcus brushed dust from another paving stone. "That makes the travelers who do come even more important." The young man smiled politely, but Marcus wasn't sure he understood. Late one afternoon, a family arrived with 2 tired horses and a small covered wagon. The father explained that heavy rains had washed away another mountain trail. "If this Roman road didn't exist," he admitted, "we never would have reached the village." Marcus smiled quietly. For one family, the road had already justified every hour spent building it. Autumn arrived with cool winds drifting down from the mountains. Golden leaves covered the roadside. Marcus often stopped to sweep them aside, not because they damaged the road, simply because he believed travelers deserved a clear path. One morning, while clearing leaves near an old milestone, he noticed something unusual. The stone marker leaned slightly. It had stood perfectly straight for years. He carefully examined the ground. Recent rain had softened the soil beneath one side. Marcus spent nearly the entire afternoon resetting the heavy marker. When he finally finished, an elderly shepherd walking past smiled. "You work as though the emperor himself is coming." Marcus laughed. "Probably not, but someone's grandmother might." The shepherd nodded. "That's reason enough." Winter came early that year.
Snow settled across the valley before the grape harvest had completely finished. Travel became difficult. For several weeks, almost no one appeared. The road rested beneath a quiet blanket of white. Marcus still walked it every few days, sometimes simply to make sure no trees had fallen across the path. On one of those cold mornings, he stood alone in the silence. The only sound came from his own footsteps. He remembered the day the village had celebrated the road's completion. Children laughing, merchants arriving, music filling the square. Now, only the wind answered him. When spring finally returned, the travelers came back, but not as many. Never quite as many. Lucius quietly counted each guest at the inn. He didn't tell anyone, but he already knew what Marcus had begun to suspect. Something was changing. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just slowly enough that most people never noticed. And sometimes, the quietest changes become the ones that shape history forever.
Morning arrived quietly over Valley Ambra. A thin layer of mist rested across the vineyards, while the first rays of sunlight painted the stone rooftops in shades of gold. The village woke gently, as it always had. Bakers lit their ovens before dawn. Shepherds gathered their flocks. Farmers loaded wooden carts with baskets of olives, grapes, and fresh vegetables. The Roman road, still new and smooth, slowly came to life. The first travelers appeared shortly after sunrise. A merchant leading 2 mules greeted everyone he passed with a cheerful smile. A physician traveling to a neighboring town paused at the village well to refill his water flask. Later that morning, a messenger wearing the red cloak of the Imperial Courier Service hurried through without stopping, his horse's steady rhythm echoing across the stone surface before fading into the hills. The road was doing exactly what it had been built to do. It connected lives. Marcus often returned to inspect different sections of the road. Although construction had finished, Roman engineers believed that every road deserved constant care. Small cracks were repaired before they became larger ones. Drainage channels were cleared after storms. Loose stones were replaced before travelers noticed them. One cool autumn morning, Marcus knelt beside a shallow ditch, clearing away leaves that had gathered after several days of rain. A young apprentice named Gaius worked beside him. Gaius was only 16, curious about everything. He watched Marcus carefully before asking, "Why do you spend so much time fixing things that hardly seem broken?" Marcus smiled without looking up. "Because that's how they stay unbroken." Gaius thought quietly. "I never looked at it that way." Marcus placed another stone into position. Most people only notice problems after they become impossible to ignore. The best builders prevent them before anyone else even sees them. The young apprentice nodded. It was a lesson that stayed with him for years. As the seasons passed, Valley Ambra became a familiar stop for many travelers. Some stayed only long enough to eat a warm meal. Others rested for several nights before continuing their journeys deeper into the mountains. The village inn grew busier every year. Its owner, Lucius, remembered almost every face. There was an elderly mapmaker who visited each spring, a family of wool merchants who arrived every autumn, a quiet teacher traveling between villages with a small cart filled with scrolls, even a retired Roman soldier who walked with a slight limp and always chose the same chair beside the fireplace. Each visitor added another small thread to the growing story of the road. One evening, after serving dinner to several guests, Lucius sat outside watching the sunset. Marcus joined him with 2 clay cups filled with warm herbal tea. Neither man spoke for several minutes. The silence felt comfortable. Finally, Lucius smiled. "When I was young, I thought roads were only made of stone." Marcus looked toward the valley. And now? I think they're made of people. Marcus nodded. I've started believing the same thing. Far below them, another wagon rolled slowly toward the village. Its wheels moved smoothly across the carefully placed paving stones. Years earlier, that same journey would have taken nearly twice as long. Now it seemed almost effortless. Winter eventually arrived. Snow covered the surrounding hills, while smoke drifted peacefully from every chimney in the village. Although fewer travelers appeared during the cold months, the road remained open. Roman workers had built it slightly higher than the surrounding ground, so melting snow could drain away instead of freezing across its surface. Marcus inspected it after every heavy snowfall. Sometimes he worked alone. Other times villagers joined him without being asked. The road no longer belonged only to Rome. It belonged to everyone who depended on it. One snowy afternoon, Marcus noticed an elderly woman struggling to pull a small cart toward the village. Without hesitation, he walked over. "May I help?" She smiled gratefully. "My firewood feels heavier every year." Together, they pulled the cart across the road until they reached her home. She thanked him with a loaf of fresh bread, still warm from the oven. Marcus accepted it with a smile. Kindness, he believed, often traveled the same roads as merchants. Years continued to pass. The young children who had watched Marcus build the road were now adults with families of their own. New homes appeared near the village entrance. Fields expanded farther into the valley. For a time, Valley Umbra seemed to be growing stronger with every passing season. But beyond the peaceful hills, the Roman Empire was changing in ways the villagers could barely imagine. Travelers arriving from larger cities spoke more frequently about rising taxes. Some mentioned that soldiers were being transferred north. Others whispered about conflicts near the empire's distant borders. A merchant passing through one evening quietly remarked, "The roads closer to the frontier aren't as safe as they used to be." Frowned. "Bandits?" The merchant shrugged. "Sometimes, but mostly uncertainty." Nobody at the inn spoke for a moment. The crackling fireplace filled the silence. Finally, someone changed the subject. Life in Valley Umbra continued much as before. The village still felt protected by its mountains, far away from politics, far away from danger, far away from history itself. Yet history has a patient way of reaching even the quietest places. It never arrives all at once. It comes little by little. A smaller harvest, a missing traveler, a delayed caravan, a road that grows just a little quieter each passing year. At first, almost no one noticed, but Marcus did. He had spent years watching the road. He knew its rhythm. And one evening, as the sun disappeared behind the western hills, he stood alone beside the ancient stones. For the first time since it had been built, the road felt strangely empty. Only the wind continued its journey. The first snow arrived earlier than anyone expected. By the middle of autumn, the mountain peaks surrounding Valley Umbra had already turned white. Cold winds drifted down into the valley each evening, carrying with them the sharp scent of pine and damp earth. The villagers prepared for another long winter. Bundles of firewood were stacked by every home. Clay jars were filled with olive oil. Loaves of bread were baked and carefully stored. Families salted meat and dried herbs, just as their parents and grandparents had done before them. Life continued with quiet determination. Marcus, now well into his 60s, still walked the Roman road every week. His pace had become slower. His back bent a little more than it once had, but he refused to stay home. "The road took care of us," he often said. "Now it's my turn to take care of it." The younger villagers admired him. Many had never known a time when Marcus wasn't walking those ancient stones. To them, he seemed as permanent as the road itself. One frosty morning, he noticed fresh wagon tracks in the snow. They were unusual, not because someone had traveled the road, but because the tracks ended halfway through the valley. Marcus followed them for nearly a mile. Eventually, he reached an abandoned farmhouse. The roof had partially collapsed. The wooden gate hung from one broken hinge. Snow had settled inside rooms where families had once gathered around warm fireplaces. Marcus stood silently in front of the empty house. He remembered the family who had lived there: a carpenter named Antonius, his cheerful wife, 3 children who loved chasing butterflies during summer afternoons. Years earlier, they had left for a larger town after several poor harvests. They had promised to return. They never did. Marcus quietly brushed snow from the old wooden fence before continuing his walk. As winter deepened, fewer people traveled between villages. The Roman road often remained untouched for days. Fresh snow covered its carefully placed stones until Marcus or another villager cleared a narrow path with simple wooden shovels. One afternoon, while resting beside an old milestone, Marcus was joined by a young girl named Livia. She carried a basket filled with dried herbs for her grandmother. She looked at the empty road and asked, "Were there really lots of travelers here?" Marcus smiled. "So many that sometimes wagons had to wait their turn." Livia looked surprised. "I've never seen that." Marcus nodded. "I know." The girl looked down the long stretch of road disappearing into the snowy hills. "Do you think they'll come back?" Marcus was quiet for several seconds. "I hope they will. But roads can only show people the way. They cannot decide where people choose to go." Livia thought about his answer as the two of them continued walking together. When spring finally arrived, it brought warm sunshine, but very few visitors. The vineyards produced another modest harvest. The wheat fields were smaller than they had once been. Several families had chosen not to plant certain fields at all. There simply weren't enough workers anymore. Lucius noticed another change inside the inn. Some evenings, he didn't bother lighting every lamp. One room was enough. One table was enough. He no longer kept extra meals waiting for unexpected travelers. Experience had taught him they rarely came. One evening, Marcus visited the inn carrying a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "I brought fresh cheese." Lucius smiled warmly. "And I made your favorite soup." The two old friends sat beside the fireplace as rain gently tapped against the windows. After a long silence, Lucius spoke. "Do you remember the celebration when the road first opened?" Marcus laughed softly. "The children covered everything with flowers, and your wife baked enough bread for half the province." Lucius smiled at the memory. She always believed visitors should leave happier than they arrived. Marcus looked into the fire. She was right. The room fell quiet again. Lucius's wife had passed away several years earlier. Sometimes memories visited more than people did. Late that night, Marcus walked home beneath a sky filled with stars. The Roman road reflected pale moonlight, its worn stones still smooth beneath his sandals. He stopped beside the old bridge crossing the narrow stream. Water flowed gently beneath it, making the same peaceful sound it had made for centuries. Marcus rested one hand on the stone railing. He realized that the bridge, the road, and the hills around him had remained almost unchanged. It was people who changed, people who moved away, people who grew older, people who eventually became stories told by their grandchildren. Nature waited patiently through each generation. The road did the same. The following morning, a courier arrived carrying news from a nearby town. Nothing urgent, nothing frightening,
simply another announcement that government officials would no longer maintain several smaller regional routes. Resources, the letter explained, were being directed towards larger cities and more important trade roads. Marcus read the notice twice, then folded it carefully. No one needed to explain what it meant. If Rome stopped caring for roads like theirs, soon only the villagers themselves would be left to protect them. And Marcus quietly wondered how much longer they would be able to do it alone.
The summer sun rose gently over Valley Ambra, warming the stone rooftops and vineyards just as it had for generations. The village still looked beautiful. Wildflowers covered the hills. Olive trees shimmered beneath the morning light. Birds filled the quiet air with familiar songs. Anyone passing through would have thought nothing had changed. But those who lived there knew better. The silence had become different, not peaceful, lonely. The marketplace that once welcomed merchants from every direction now opened only twice each week. Several wooden stalls remained empty. The baker still arrived before sunrise, but he baked fewer loaves than he once had. There simply weren't enough customers anymore. Lucius noticed it every morning. Years earlier, he needed help serving breakfast to travelers. Now he often prepared meals alone. Sometimes an entire afternoon passed without hearing a single knock at the inn's front door. One evening, Marcus stopped by after inspecting another section of the Roman road. Lucius placed 2 bowls of vegetable stew on the table. The room around them felt unusually quiet. Marcus looked around. No guests tonight? Lucius smiled gently. Only you. Marcus lowered his eyes. I remember when people had to wait for a table. So do I. Neither man spoke for a while. The fireplace crackled softly between them. Finally, Lucius broke the silence. Do you ever wonder where everyone went? Marcus thought carefully before answering. I don't think they all left at once. I think they simply stopped coming. Outside, the Roman road stretched into the evening light, smooth, strong, almost empty. The following week, Marcus began another inspection. He walked slowly along the familiar stones, stopping every few hundred steps to clear weeds or remove loose branches. Most of the road remained in remarkable condition. Roman engineers had truly built it to last, yet nature had become more confident. Small patches of moss covered shaded sections. Tiny roots pushed gently against the edges of older stones. Nothing dangerous, just quiet reminders that the earth never stopped growing. As Marcus continued walking, he reached an old milestone. He remembered placing it himself nearly 30 years earlier. The carved letters had faded. Rain and wind had slowly worn away the sharp edges. He brushed dust away with his hand. The stone still stood proudly, even if few travelers noticed it anymore. Later that afternoon, Marcus met a shepherd named Felix guiding a flock across nearby hills. Felix waved cheerfully. You're still taking care of the road. Marcus smiled. Someone should. The shepherd looked toward the empty valley. Sometimes I think you know every stone by name. Marcus laughed. Almost. Felix's smile slowly disappeared. My oldest son is leaving next month. Marcus looked surprised. Leaving? He found work near Ravenna. There isn't enough land here anymore. Marcus nodded slowly. Another family. Another goodbye. By autumn, several homes near the edge of the village stood empty. Their gardens slowly filled with weeds. Wooden shutters remained closed day after day. The sound of children playing grew quieter.
Even the village school had fewer students than before. No one panicked. No one believed Valley Umbra was disappearing. People simply adapted. Those who remained worked harder. Neighbors helped one another whenever they could. The community stayed close, but each year there were fewer hands to share the work. One rainy evening, a traveler finally arrived at Lucius's inn. He introduced himself as Julius, a map maker traveling through northern Italy. After supper, he carefully unrolled several maps across the wooden table. Marcus leaned closer. The maps showed roads, rivers, villages, mountain passes. Julius sighed quietly. "I'm updating old records." Marcus pointed toward Valley Umbra. "Is our village on your map?" The map maker searched for a moment, then smiled. "Yes, for now." Marcus frowned. "What does that mean?" Julius hesitated. "When villages become smaller, sometimes new maps leave them out. Not because they never existed, but because so few people travel there anymore." The room became silent. Lucius looked into the fire. He had never imagined a place could slowly disappear from maps. Not through war, not through disaster, simply by becoming forgotten. That thought stayed with Marcus for many days. One afternoon, he climbed the small hill overlooking the valley. The same hill where he had stood as a young man while the Roman road was still under construction. From there, he could see nearly everything. The vineyards, the fields, the winding road, the tiny village resting peacefully among the hills. It looked exactly as it always had, yet somehow it felt smaller. Not because the village had changed, but because the world around it had grown larger. Marcus sat quietly beneath an old oak tree until sunset. A cool breeze carried the scent of pine from the distant mountains. He closed his eyes for a moment and listened. No wagon wheels, no horses, no merchants calling to one another. Only birds, the wind, and the quiet whisper of leaves moving across the ancient Roman stones. For the first time since helping build the road all those years ago, Marcus wondered if one day the road would remain, long after the village at its end had disappeared from memory.
Several more years passed as quietly as falling leaves. The seasons continued their familiar cycle. Spring covered the hills with wildflowers. Summer ripened the vineyards beneath long days of warm sunshine. Autumn painted the forests in gold and crimson. Winter wrapped the valley in peaceful silence. Nature kept its promises. People could not. Marcus had become an old man. His once powerful hands now trembled slightly whenever he lifted his hammer. His dark hair had turned completely silver. The long walks that once felt effortless now required frequent rests beneath the shade of old trees. Yet every few days, he still walked the Roman road, not because anyone expected him to, because he couldn't imagine his life without it. One clear autumn morning, he stopped beside the milestone he had repaired decades earlier. The carved letters had almost disappeared beneath wind and rain. He gently brushed away moss with the sleeve of his tunic. His fingers rested against the cool stone. "So," he whispered with a small smile, "we've both grown old." A soft breeze moved through the valley. For a moment, the only sound was the rustling of dry leaves crossing the ancient pavement. Later that afternoon, Marcus returned to the village square. He found only a handful of children playing beneath the old oak tree.
Years earlier, their laughter would have echoed from every corner of the square. Many families had left. Some moved to larger towns. Others followed opportunities farther south. A few simply disappeared from memory as generations passed. The empty homes remained, wooden doors weathered beneath sun and rain, garden walls slowly crumbled. Nature quietly reclaimed every place people abandoned. Lucius was old now as well. His inn remained open, but mostly out of habit. Entire weeks sometimes passed without welcoming a single guest. Even so, each morning he swept the front steps. Each evening he lit the lantern outside the entrance. Hope, he believed, deserved its own place at the table. One evening, Marcus joined him beside the fireplace. The room felt peaceful, almost too peaceful. Lucius poured 2 cups of warm herbal tea. "I had a visitor today," he said. Marcus smiled. "A traveler?" Lucius nodded. "Only one. What was he looking for?" "The old Roman road." Marcus laughed softly. Then he found it. Lucius looked thoughtfully into the fire. "He said something interesting." "What was that?" "He told me, sometimes forgotten places tell history better than famous ones." Marcus remained silent. The words settled gently between them. Before leaving, Marcus stepped outside. The moon had risen above the mountains. Its pale light reflected across the smooth stone road. He remembered the day it had opened, the celebration, the music, children running across newly laid stones, merchants arriving with brightly colored fabrics, the smell of fresh bread drifting through the square. Now, those sounds lived only inside memory. Winter arrived quietly. Snow covered the valley once more. Marcus no longer walked the entire length of the road. His legs simply wouldn't allow it. Instead, he visited the section nearest the village each morning. He carried a wooden broom, sweeping away snow from the entrance as best he could. One morning, Livia, now a young woman, found him working alone. "You don't have to do this anymore," she said gently. Marcus smiled without stopping. "I know." "Then why do you?" He rested both hands on the broom. "Because someday, someone may come this way. I'd like them to know someone was still waiting." Livia quietly picked up another broom. Without another word, she began sweeping beside him. The following spring brought heavy rain, unlike anything the valley had seen in many years. The small river overflowed. Water rushed across nearby fields. Several wooden fences disappeared beneath the current. When the storm finally ended, Marcus walked slowly to inspect the road. Most of it remained untouched. Roman engineers had built excellent drainage centuries earlier. But farther down the valley, a section near the forest had vanished beneath a massive landslide. Earth, trees, and stone covered nearly 50 yards of pavement. Marcus stood silently before it. He didn't try to clear it. He knew it would take dozens of workers, perhaps hundreds. He simply placed one hand upon the nearest visible paving stone. After a long moment, he turned and walked back towards the village, not with sadness, but with understanding. Even the strongest roads eventually surrendered to time. That evening, Marcus sat outside his small farmhouse, watching the sun disappear behind the hills. The Roman road glowed softly beneath the fading light. He smiled to himself. The road had carried thousands of footsteps, connected countless lives, witnessed births, goodbyes, harvests, celebrations, and quiet,
ordinary days that history books would never mention. Perhaps that was enough. Perhaps that had always been enough. As darkness settled across the valley, Marcus looked toward Valle Ombra one last time. The village lights flickered gently in the distance. Beautiful, peaceful, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, becoming a place the world was beginning to forget.
The years continued to pass with the quiet certainty of changing seasons. Spring blossoms gave way to warm summers. Summer faded into golden autumns. Autumn slowly surrendered to long, peaceful winters. For the people of Valle Ombra, life still followed the same familiar rhythm their grandparents had known. The church bell welcomed each sunrise. Children hurried along the Roman road carrying baskets of bread to nearby farms. Shepherds guided their flocks across green hills that stretched toward the distant mountains. On the surface, very little had changed. Yet beneath that peaceful routine, the village was slowly becoming more isolated. Marcus noticed it first, then Lucius, then everyone else. One morning, Marcus stood beside the road counting the wagons that passed before noon. Only 3. Years ago, there would have been 12 or 15. He didn't write the number down, he simply remembered it. The following week, only 2. By the end of the month, some days passed without a single merchant appearing. The road remained as strong as ever. Its smooth stone surface showed almost no sign of age. The problem was never the road itself, it was the world beyond it. Travelers brought stories that sounded increasingly uncertain. The northern provinces are struggling. There are fewer soldiers on the highways. Several trading towns have closed their markets. Every traveler seemed to carry a different version of the same message. Something was changing across the empire. No one knew exactly how serious it was. One cool afternoon, Marcus met Septimus again. The old merchant looked much older than before. His beard had turned almost completely white. Even his faithful mule walked more slowly. Marcus greeted him warmly. "It's been months." Septimus smiled. "I've started taking fewer journeys." Marcus nodded. "I've noticed." The merchant climbed down from his wagon and stretched his tired back. "My sons don't think this route is worth the time anymore. They prefer the larger cities, more customers, more money." Marcus looked toward the empty road disappearing into the valley. "And you?" Septimus smiled softly. "I still like quiet places." He looked around the peaceful countryside. There aren't many left. That evening, Lucius welcomed only 2 guests into his inn. One was a traveling potter, the other a young monk walking toward a monastery several valleys away. After supper, they all sat near the fireplace while rain tapped gently against the wooden shutters. The monk spoke quietly. "I've spent almost a year traveling." Lucius poured another cup of warm herbal tea. "What have you learned?" The young man smiled. "That every village believes it will last forever." The room became silent. Finally, Lucius asked, "And will they?" The monk looked into the fire. "Nothing built by people lasts forever, but kindness often does." Marcus remembered those words long after the monk continued his journey. The following spring brought unexpected trouble. The small river that supplied water to several nearby farms began flowing differently after weeks of unusually heavy rain. Its current slowly carved a new path through the valley. Some fields received too much water, others not enough. The harvest that year was smaller than anyone expected. Not disastrous, simply disappointing. Families adjusted. They always had. Some planted different crops, others raised a few more sheep instead of relying entirely on grain. Life continued, but little by little, young people began leaving. One family moved closer to a larger town where work was easier to find. A blacksmith's son joined traders heading south. Two brothers left together, hoping to become soldiers. Each farewell seemed ordinary. No one imagined they would never return. Marcus often watched them disappear along the Roman road he had helped build decades earlier. The road that once brought people into Valle Umbra was now quietly leading them away. Lucius noticed another change. Letters arrived less often. Sometimes months passed before news reached the village. The courier service that once traveled regularly now appeared only occasionally. One afternoon, Marcus found himself walking beside the road alone. Wildflowers still bloomed between the stones. Butterflies still drifted lazily across the fields. Nature seemed completely unaware that human lives were changing. He knelt to brush away a patch of moss growing near one edge of the pavement. His movements were slower now. Gray hair had begun appearing beneath the edges of his hood. His hands carried the marks of a lifetime spent shaping stone. As he worked, a small boy approached carrying a wooden fishing pole. The child stopped and watched quietly. "Were you really here when they built this road?" Marcus smiled. "I was." The boy's eyes widened. "That's a long time." Marcus laughed softly. "It certainly feels that way." The boy looked toward the distant hills. "Do you think people will still use it when I'm old?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he rested one hand upon the cool stone beneath him. "I hope so." Then he added gently, "But roads can only guide people. They cannot make anyone stay." The boy thought about those words before continuing toward the river. Marcus remained where he was, watching the empty road stretch across the valley. For the first time in many years, he wondered whether even the finest road in the Roman Empire could survive if there were no travelers left to walk upon it. Far away, beyond the mountains, the empire continued to weaken. The people of Valle Umbra still knew very little about those distant events. They simply noticed that each season felt a little quieter than the one before, and without realizing it, they were living through the beginning of the end of an age that had once seemed as permanent as the ancient stones beneath their feet.
The announcement from the regional officials spread quietly through Valle Umbra. No one gathered in the village square. No one argued. The people simply continued with their daily work while carrying the news silently in their thoughts. For generations, the Roman Empire had maintained the great roads that connected towns across the countryside. Now, for the first time, the villagers understood that they could no longer depend on distant officials to remember their little corner of the world. Life would continue, but more responsibility now rested on their own shoulders. The following weekend, nearly everyone in the village gathered beside the old road. Not because anyone had ordered them to. They came because they believed the road still mattered. Farmers brought shovels. Carpenters carried wooden tools. Young boys gathered loose stones along the roadside. Even elderly villagers, unable to perform heavy labor, prepared food and fresh water for those who worked. Marcus stood quietly, watching the scene unfold. It reminded him of the years when the road had first been built, except now the people repairing it were not Roman engineers. They were fathers, mothers, grandparents, neighbors. The road had become theirs.
Marcus picked up his old hammer. Its wooden handle had become smooth after decades of use. Many younger workers asked him questions throughout the day. Should this stone be turned? How deep should this trench be? Marcus answered each patiently. The road teaches you. You only need to learn how to listen. They smiled. Some laughed softly, but they followed his advice. By sunset, several damaged sections had been repaired. The road looked almost new again. Not perfect, but cared for. And sometimes, being cared for matters more than being perfect. That evening, the villagers shared a simple meal beneath the large oak tree in the center of Valleambra. Fresh bread, olives, cheese, warm vegetable soup. Children played nearby while the adults exchanged quiet conversation. Lucius looked around the gathering. There may not be many travelers anymore, he said, but we still have one another. Everyone nodded. No one disagreed. Several days later, Marcus decided to walk the entire length of the Roman road leading away from the village. He had done the journey many times before, but this time felt different. He wanted to see every stone, every bridge, every milestone, perhaps for one last time. The morning air was cool. Birdsong echoed across the valley. The road curved gently through vineyards before climbing into low wooded hills. Marcus stopped often, sometimes simply to admire the view, sometimes to remember. At one bend stood an old fig tree. He remembered eating lunch beneath its shade while the road was still under construction. Farther ahead stood a narrow bridge. He remembered helping rebuild it after a flood nearly 20 years earlier. Near another milestone, he smiled as memories returned of children racing beside merchant wagons on warm summer afternoons. Every place along the road carried a story, not written in books, written in memory. By midday, Marcus reached the highest hill overlooking the valley. From there, he could see Valleambra resting peacefully below. Thin trails of smoke rose from stone chimneys. Tiny figures moved through fields preparing the next harvest. The village looked small, almost hidden among the rolling hills. He sat beneath an old oak tree and quietly ate the bread and cheese Lucius had packed for him. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves overhead. For a long while, there was only silence. Then Marcus heard footsteps. An unfamiliar traveler appeared from around the bend. He wore a faded brown cloak and carried a walking staff polished smooth from years of travel. The stranger smiled politely. "Good afternoon." Marcus returned the greeting. "You've come a long way." "I have," the traveler replied. "I've been following old Roman roads for nearly 3 months." Marcus seemed surprised. Most people choose the newer routes now. The traveler nodded. "That's exactly why I prefer these. They're quieter." He looked down at the ancient paving stones. "They remind me that people once built things to last beyond their own lifetimes." Marcus smiled. "They certainly tried." The traveler sat beside him beneath the tree. For nearly an hour, they spoke about roads, villages, mountains, weather. Nothing important, yet somehow everything important. Before leaving, the traveler looked toward Valleambra. "It's a beautiful place." Marcus nodded proudly. "It has always been home." The traveler hesitated. "I hope people continue remembering it." Marcus looked at the village in the distance. "So do I."
The stranger continued his journey. His footsteps slowly disappeared down the old Roman road until he vanished beyond the hills. Marcus remained beneath the oak tree long after the traveler was gone. He couldn't explain why, but something about those words stayed with him. I hope people continue remembering it. As evening approached, Marcus began walking back toward the village. The setting sun painted the road golden. Long shadows stretched across the ancient stones. Everything looked peaceful, timeless. Yet deep inside, Marcus felt a quiet sadness. Not because the road was failing, the road remained as strong as ever. It was memory that worried him. Roads could survive for centuries, but memories sometimes disappeared within a single generation.
The spring after Marcus passed away arrived as gently as every spring before it. Wildflowers bloomed beside the old Roman road. The vineyards turned green once more. The birds returned to the valley, singing the same songs they had sung for centuries. Nature continued without hesitation, but the village felt different. For the first time in living memory, no one walked the road each morning with a hammer over one shoulder. No one stopped to brush moss from the milestones. No one paused beside the bridge simply to make sure it was still standing. The people of Valleambra buried Marcus on a small hill overlooking the valley he had loved all his life. His grave was simple. A single stone marked the place. It carried only his name and a short inscription chosen by the villagers. He built roads that brought people home. There were no grand speeches, only quiet tears and grateful hearts. Life continued. It always did. But each passing year brought another family leaving the village. Some followed better farmland. Others searched for work in growing cities. Young people dreamed of places beyond the mountains. The old houses slowly emptied. Wooden doors remained closed. Gardens became overgrown. Stone walls began to crumble beneath rain, frost, and creeping ivy. Lucius kept his inn open for as long as he could, even when there were no guests, even when the kitchen remained silent for days. One evening, he lit the lantern outside the front door, just as he always had. Then he smiled to himself. "There may not be another traveler tonight," he whispered. "But if one comes, he should know someone was waiting." Years later, when Lucius finally grew too old to continue, he quietly locked the inn's wooden door for the last time. He placed the key beneath the same flower pot where generations of travelers had once found it whenever they arrived after dark. No one ever used the key again. Slowly, the village disappeared. Not because of war, not because of plague, not because of fire. People simply left, one family, then another, then another. The fields returned to grassland. The vineyards became tangled with wild vines. Trees grew where children had once played. The Roman road remained, patient, silent, its stones still resting exactly where Marcus had placed many of them decades earlier. Leaves gathered across the pavement every autumn. Moss covered the shaded edges. Tree roots slowly reached beneath the ancient stones. Nature reclaimed the valley with extraordinary patience. Generations passed. Kings rose and fell. Empires disappeared. Languages changed countless times. Eventually, Valleambra vanished from them altogether. Travelers no longer spoke its name. Historians rarely mentioned it. The road became nothing more than a forgotten line hidden beneath forests. For hundreds of years, Valleambra slept peacefully. Then, one cool morning in the early 21st century, a team of archaeologists arrived, carrying notebooks, cameras, and ground survey equipment. Their leader was Professor Elena Rossi. She had spent years studying ancient Roman transportation networks. Old records suggested that somewhere beneath the forest lay a missing stretch of Roman road. Many believed the documents were inaccurate. Others thought the road had been destroyed centuries earlier. Elena believed otherwise. After several days of careful surveying, one young researcher noticed something unusual beneath a layer of fallen leaves: a perfectly straight line of stone. They carefully cleared away moss, then soil, then tangled roots. Little by little, the ancient pavement appeared, still remarkably smooth, still perfectly aligned, exactly as Roman engineers had built it more than 1,600 years before. The team followed the road deeper into the forest. Around every bend they discovered more signs of forgotten lives: broken roof tiles, fragments of clay pottery, the remains of stone walls, an old village well, then the foundations of dozens of homes. Valleambra had been found again, not as a thriving village, but as a quiet memory preserved beneath the earth. The archaeologists spent months documenting every discovery. They found no evidence of sudden disaster, no signs of battle, no burned buildings, no mass graves. Instead, everything suggested a peaceful departure. The villagers had simply left over many generations as trade faded, opportunities disappeared, and life slowly moved elsewhere. History had not ended there. It had simply continued somewhere else. One afternoon, Elena stood beside the uncovered Roman road as sunlight filtered through the trees. She imagined merchants leading wagons, children running beside them, farmers returning home after long days in the fields. She imagined Marcus checking each stone with patient hands, never knowing that someone 16 centuries later would admire his work. She smiled softly. The builders were right. One of her colleagues looked up. About what? Elena rested her hand upon one of the ancient paving stones. They believed these roads would outlive them. She looked down a quiet path disappearing into the forest. They did. Today, if you walk through certain quiet valleys of northern Italy, you may still find fragments of Roman roads hidden beneath grass, leaves, and ancient trees. Most travelers pass without noticing them. But if you stop for a moment, if you listen to the wind moving gently through the forest, it becomes easy to imagine the footsteps of those who walked there long ago. Farmers, merchants, children, pilgrims, builders, ordinary people whose names have been forgotten, but whose lives shaped history in quiet and lasting ways. Because history is not remembered only through emperors or great battles. Sometimes it is remembered through a single road, a forgotten village, and the patient hands of those who believed their work might help someone they would never meet. And perhaps they were right.